Some of the deepest fears I have are like related to a historical pattern of behavioral thinking, which I don't know that I was even conscious of.
He started some of the biggest movie franchises of all time.
Please welcome Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom.
I think that our deepest fears, they often lie in areas unknown to us, because anything that I try to hold on to doesn't serve me, and that's really hard.
Hey everyone, I've got some huge news to share with you. In the last 90 days, 79.4% of our audience came from viewers and listeners that are not subscribed to this channel. There's research that shows that if you want to create a habit, make it easy to access. By hitting the subscribe button, you're creating a habit of learning how to be happier, healthier, and more healed. This would also mean the absolute world to me and help us make better, bigger, brighter content for you and the world. Subscribe right now.
The #1 health and wellness podcast.
Jay Shetty.
Jay Shetty.
The one, the only Jay Shetty.
You know, you were saying you're new to the world of podcasting, but it seems to be something you're opening yourself up to. Where's that coming from?
Well, first of all, I love what you do. Thank you for having me. It's so beautiful to see the messaging you put out in the world. To the Edge is the first time I've worked in a unscripted space, and I'm very proud of it. And I thought I'd try. I haven't intentionally not done podcasts. I just haven't. And I've been wanting, as you said, to work with you for ages. So I was like, to at least sit down and have a conversation with you. And I tried to get to one of your speaking engagements, which I wasn't able to. But it's like, I just thought this is an opportunity to like have a heart-centric conversation. And I love the messaging you're putting out. And actually, Edge is a show that came up. It was the birth child, the brainchild of a period of time that I think was really challenging in the world for everyone, through COVID, where I think fear was sort of around all of us. We were all like, wait, what? What are we living through? This is so unique. And it was sort of palpable in my environment. And I'm not comfortable with fear. I'm always like, I run into it. I want to transform it. I want to, it's, people say, what are you afraid of? Right. Oh, sharks. I'm like, I'm afraid of fear, because it's like, I want to confront anything in my life that feels challenging on those levels. So actually, initially, I would love to have spoken to you on my show. I had this idea where I would speak to people, and also people like in blue zones and spaces in the world where people like have just got it figured. They've got it dialed, whether it's through diet, lifestyle choices, and all of the things that you speak about. It's like, I was like, I want to go and explore the people in the world that do that. And I've had this amazing opportunity with UNICEF for many years, 20 years now almost. And so I've sort of been in communities where I've seen how what a great impact positivity can have, right? Which I think is the message of UNICEF, also the funding that they support for communities. So I was like, I want to go and sort of talk to people, but we didn't really we got no hits. Nobody was really interested in me doing that. And I think there's also a Blue Zone show that is apparently epic as well. So, but how about we just throw you out of a plane and we'll see if you can swim to the bottom of the ocean and we'll throw you up a mountain. And I was like, I can do that. It also feeds into my sort of adrenaline sort of fueled sort of aspects of my life. I think, as a kid, I think I just was so active and physical and sort of approached life with that fearlessness. And in some ways, that was a blessing, but I definitely came out banged up and bruised. I think I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was like maybe 9, 10. So I had some extra schooling in that space. And that really helped me because I had a kind of unusually high IQ, but I just was really challenged at focus and concentration. I think I was probably undiagnosed early on with like probably ADHD, which I've subsequently kind of come to realize that was definitely something that I've been navigating. And now I've kind of found my way through to the sort of magic of what that can be for me.
Do you remember your earliest fear as a kid?
it's funny because I'm an actor, but I used to just be terrified of getting on stage.
No way.
I had real stage fright as a kid. I was actually, my mother enrolled me into a ballet class as a kid. So until like, I think from probably a tiny toddler until I was maybe 4 or 5. And I think at around 4, we did this performance in Canterbury at the Marlow Theatre, which is the biggest theatre in town, pretty big theatre actually. And we did a little ballet show, which was just me there was probably a whole lot going on, and I'm 4, so I don't entirely remember, but I do know that I was dressed in a monkey suit. I remember having a really hot, itchy monkey suit on and having an itch on my bottom. And I was a little embarrassed, so I turned around to scratch my bottom so nobody would see me. But the whole audience just ripped because kind of cute, right? This little. So I think my first fear was like being on stage. So I kind of, I did all the National Youth Theatre stuff in London. I did youth theatre. Everything I could do at school was my sort of start. And I was just constantly, every time I did it, like I used to remember walking on stage and I'd be like, my mum used to do this. She'd be like, you can, my mum had this one thing and she'd shake her fist at me. Says a lot about my mum. But she'd shake her fist and say, you can do it, And so I had this thing and I'd sort of go, and then I was quite, I was confirmed in the Cathedral of Canterbury by the Archbishop of Canterbury because it was like where I'm from and stuff, which is kind of a big deal. Religious practice was always kind of a part of my life. So I'd always sort of say a prayer as well and think, and then kind of go out and do it. And and it was like never more focused than when I was on stage. And that was a great feeling because otherwise I think I was struggling in school to articulate my thoughts or follow or continue my thought thread. So yeah, I think fear for me was that, which is ironic because of course now I'm, then I went on to being an actor, but and also I have I think at 16 I moved to London, which was quite young, and I was on my own to do my A-levels. And it was when I was 16 that I met a Buddhist practice.
So early.
Yeah. So I was very young to meet a Buddhist practice, and it was a philosophy and it is a religious practice, but it's way more of a sort of philosophy and almost like a guide to life, if you like, for me.
What was it about it at 16 that resonated with you?
I think that having left the sort of institutionalized schooling that you and I both recognize from London and England, rather, not London. I was in Canterbury, but I went to a private school. I had a pretty solid middle class education. But so it was like there was sort of, chapel every morning, Simpson, and so I had that sort of in me. And I think I really enjoyed that. But when I moved to London, I didn't find a church or find a community. And it was when I was studying for my A-levels that I realized that I needed extra art for my sculpture exam, which I hadn't thought through. I'd given up art quite at a young age. I just didn't have a teacher it was unfortunate. So I met through my best friend. I met an artist. He introduced me and I did extra classes. I'd sort of go back to Kent. He was actually from Kent. So I'd go down on the weekends and he'd set me up in a room and he'd say, with an easel, and he'd say, here, just do this. And I'd hear him in the other room and he'd be going, Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, Nam-myoho-renge-kyo. And I'd be like, just carry on. And one day I walked down and said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm just chanting that you're going to be really successful in your exams and you have a really successful life. I was like, cool. Well, will it help? He goes, yeah. I was like, great. So I just got down on my knees. I was like, Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, Nam-myoho. And so David, who I've known since I'm maybe 16 or 17, but he shakabuku me, which is what we call in my practice, where somebody introduces you to the practice. So he was wonderful because he sort of, at 16, I was living in London and I was a real tearaway. I mean, I was like a club kid. I was like having a really good time. Everything was like, I wasn't, I don't want to mischaracterize myself because in some ways I always knew what I wanted. So I kind of had a sort of self-discipline regulator almost. I didn't go too far, but I always pushed the boundaries of what I could do. And I was having a really good time. And I was like, and I said, well, he explained it in a very sort of simple way to me, but it was like, I was like, well, can I chant for these things that I kind of, and it could have been anything. And he was like, yeah, sure. And sometimes it was like, well, I want to have a really good night and this, that, and the other. And he was like, see what happens. And I would. And sometimes I'd wake up with a really sore head and I'd be like, oh, okay, so words like integrity, wisdom, courage, compassion, things that were started to come filtered at a young age into my thinking through also the writings of Daisaku Ikeda, who's my mentor. And so it was this perfect moment for me, because I think I always wanted a roadmap. I think there's an art to living. And for me, this philosophy is, for me, it's a way for me to understand the art of living. And I think it's really like the law of cause and effect. And I think all religions kind of mix and match and meet. The central core of all practices, I think, is one of, goodwill, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. But there's almost like science, like cause and effect, what goes up must come down. It just sort of, it worked for me as an idea. And so, yeah, I became but it took me 4 years. I shakubuku my sister, my best friend, and it was like, and one day my best friend goes, well, I'm going to go and get Gohonzon. Gohonzon is this scroll that we chant to. And I was like, wait, you what? He said, I'm getting Gohonzon. I was like, and he'd been chanting for like maybe, I don't know, 6-8 months. And I was like, okay, I'll join you. I was like, I've been doing this for 4 years and I hadn't, or, years and I hadn't. So yeah, I became a member of the SGI, which is the organization. And that was, when I was 9, a bit later, because I'd started chanting, but I just used to I chanted, and it was like, it kept me in rhythm, and that's really, for me, it kept me in a flow. It's like the rhythm of life. And in a way, when I was doing my sculpture exam, I remember I was painting like a whale bone and a lemon or a pineapple, or like it was a whale bone and like some kind of piece of fruit. And I was like, I'd look at it, I'd be painting, and it was a 15-hour still life oil painting exam. I had a still life drawing exam as well as the sculpture. I'd go to the toilet, I'd be like, I'm come back, and we'd like, and finish the painting. And I think like, yeah, I got the highest grade, and then they called and said, we'd like to keep this work as the highest grade for the country, kind of thing, as like this is the bench. And I was like, I hadn't been doing art, and so I really tested it, and it was, I think the power, as you know, when you set an intention, and at such a young age, for young people today, I think having something like something that you can trust, and I think, I really admire. I think it's hard to have faith. But
with the chanting and with the practice or the habit of that, what were some of the more philosophical lessons or principles that kind of became anchors or a compass in your life at that time? Were there certain teachings or lessons that stood out and you were like, oh, these are going to form the principles that I'm going to live by?
Yeah, so many. Daisaku Ikeda, fortunately, has written extensively, and it's very accessible.
For those who don't know, please tell us who.
So Daisaku Ikeda is my mentor. He was he brought this practice from Japan around the world. It was it was in the 60s. I think he is when he left Japan and traveled first to Hawaii. And the founding members of this practice, and many of whom are wonderful Japanese women who have been living around the world. But he brought this practice to 193 countries, I think now. His mentor, Jose Toda, and before that, Jose Toda's mentor, Machiguki, in the 60s in Japan, brought this practice forward. And Daisaku Ikeda really made it accessible. He wrote extensively. He's written a book about his book about his life is written from another perspective. It's like it's him, but it's written as another person. Would you say it third person? Well, if it's not the same, but if it's him, but it's not. He's got a pseudonym for who it is.
Yeah, right, a pseudonym. Yeah,
right. So but it's. I think there are so many ideas within the practice, but at its core, it's like I just find that through chanting, you say Nam, I devote myself, Myoho Renge Kyo, to the mystic law of cause and effect through the vibration of sound. And the sound is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo is the title of the Lotus Sutra. And as you may or may not know, but yeah, Shakyamuni, or the Buddha, Siddhartha, he wrote sutras, meaning teachings, and in the last 8 years of his life, it was the Lotus Sutra before he passed that he sort of proclaimed as the teaching that would lead all living beings to enlightenment in this lifetime. And so that's why we chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo being also the title of the Lotus Sutra. And then I recite 2 chapters from the expedient means of the lifespan chapter from the Lotus Sutra, which is part of this practice, which is beautifully Japanese because it traveled from India through the Silk Paths and landed in Japan. And it was Nichiren Daishonin, who was in 1270 around then. So you call that the 13th century. He propagated the teaching, and he brought this teaching to the world at that time. So he enshrined in Sumi ink the Gohonzon, which is, as I sort of said, that scroll that I chant to. He inscribed it with Sumi ink, and he gave, because he recognized that sort of humans needed something, a mandala, something to look at. And really it's like polishing my mirror. So excuse my ADD brain, but it's like polishing my mirror. So I think about, when I chant, I think about, in India, it was like a bronze mirror, and you polish it and then you see your reflection, right? So the more I chant, the more I see my reflection, and I see the things, or like it's like a tea leaf, a glass of tea, and I'm just like stirring away, and it comes to the surface, and you'll do chanting. And I think as you get older, and I have, 2 beautiful children, and you realize that like, it's sort of, I think death is a big part of life, and it's something that some people can be very uncomfortable with or challenged by, and we're mystically, here for such a short period of time relative to everything. And this practice is like kind of constantly preparing you. And it's sort of, so the obstacles that you see in life, because essentially, the way that I've learned through my practice is that we're born, we grow old, we'll get sick, and we'll die. And so will everyone around us. And hopefully nobody we love too soon. But the truth is, you will lose. And I think that when you can see the obstacles in your life, and it may be just waking up in the morning and getting a bill that you can't afford to pay, or, for somebody, or when you take the obstacles in your life as the opportunities for your growth, when you reframe it as, oh, wow, because the truth is, at least my truth through my practice is that we're never not going to have obstacles, right? And it's just how we see those obstacles and whether they become our benefit. So it's like painting a canvas, right? Like when I broke my back, or when I had, near-death experiences, experiences, I say, about a few kind of interesting things in my life, or a heartbreak, or a heart reveal, or, something that happened in school, or things like those are the deep colors in your canvas. Otherwise, everything's a sort of like plain, nice, and you want those rich textures, right? Or at least I do. So I found that, the practice has given me the sort of the pathway. And by the way, I am like, I intentionally sabotage myself. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not chanting. I haven't chanted because I'm like, I get in my own way. I'm far from I'm like literally, and I'll get picked up on it by friends. I have a very, I have David and my best friend Mark and Chris who's in the show actually, I call Gibbo. We all practice, and so we kind of keep each other kind of accountable a little bit as well. But as you get older, I think you probably experience in your own way, but it becomes so much harder, just to keep that kind of that faith in everything because but it's been for me I think I was such a young age to get it. I know people who are born into it because their parents were so, and that's like this fortune baby I call it, and that's so blessed, such a blessing. But the 8 Winds is something that Nichiren Daishonin wrote this book. I didn't intend this to be all about Buddhism.
I love it. It's beautiful.
I'm just like riffing.
It's beautiful.
But like he wrote the Go Show, and it's like letters to his disciples. And it's crazy because they're written in 1270 something, in the 13th century, but they're so weirdly current. Like it's a bit, because it's like, there's a samurai, Shingo Kingyo, who I kind of like see myself as like, maybe I was, I have this like nice idea of who he was, but like he had had shared the practice with his master, and his master was like giving him all these lands. And then all these other samurai were jealous. And so they tore his character down and he was banished. And then he managed to kind of come back because of his practice and communicate to his lord. And it kind of worked. But it's like, we know that story. It happens in every office or in every city, or at least, we've heard it time and time again. So they're so sort of current and relative. But
absolutely.
The 8 winds is a really great, is one that I grew up. A wise man is not swayed by the 8 winds of praise, censure, honor, disgrace, pleasure, suffering, prosperity, decline. And,
wow, that is really powerful.
And that was one that just like, for me, it was like, just, I think I've been swayed many a time.
How does one not get swayed by praise? And what was the second word?
Praise and censure. So the opposites, right?
Yes,
so,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So how does one not get swayed?
Yeah, I think as a younger man, and I feel I'm young at heart, so I kind of like.
You look young, man.
Some years ago, when I was what I feel like really in the eye of the storm, and just like my whole life was just like tabloid fodder in some ways. It felt like constantly, and anything I did, I think that was really challenging for me. It was like, and I don't think I didn't have any kind of major meltdowns, but like I was really upset about how my character felt like it was being dragged. Actually, it's why I started an Instagram account, which I started very late in the game, but I only did it because actually my partner Katie had said, it's a really good way to gather the reins and create a narrative. And like, now I know it's like, I don't know how many people even really use. There's so many different new app things, media platforms, but in a way it kind of was it sort of helped me to kind of create my own narrative, at least, and to put messaging out that I felt was, reflected my ideas and views, which obviously are mostly very centered around my practice. And Daisaku Ikeda, really, his writings.
I love seeing you post about Daisaku Ikeda. It's one of my favorites.
So he says he has
phenomenal.
Beautiful things. And so, so I think I just kind of, my practice definitely helped me with that. It was definitely anchoring. I think I got very good at hiding, which I would never encourage. And but in a way I kind of like, I got very good at putting a hat on and moving through the world without. And, if I could go back, I would probably say to that kid, like, you know what? Shine it, bro. Just you're here to make mistakes. And if they're public or private, they're the mistakes that's that deep purple in your canvas. Yeah. Just, it's not really how you go down, it's how you get up, right? So, and trust your heart, trust that you're in the flow. And that's something that I don't think I had a lot of, as a kid. So as you move on, you just go, well, the noise just eventually subsides. And now I'm like, have a perspective on it just from years. And I'm like, it's helped to know, I think but it was definitely through chanting that I think, and my practice and friends and the community that I had around me at the time, and also being on the road and working so much. I think I just most of it was just like, didn't really look at it, didn't really pay attention. But
hearing you say that, I mean, what's beautiful is that it often feels like so many of these lessons can only be lived and understood when they're lived, but it's helpful to know the lesson you're learning and how it fits in. Yeah. It's almost like you had to go through that. You couldn't have asked yourself to deal with it better or do better at the time.
No.
But the fact that you had this lesson, philosophy, practice to guide
fall back
you
on, or to like kind of understand, give me perspective.
Yeah.
For sure. That was a massive blessing.
Yeah. When you're talking about fears and your first fear all the way through to this, obviously, when you watch the show, there's this feeling of the external fear, right? Like the idea of jumping out of a plane, the idea of rock climbing, all of these things are naturally inherently scary.
Right.
What's the internal fear when you're doing it? Like, what is the dialogue that's going on? Because obviously you're quite a reflective, thoughtful individual. What's really the fear? Because it obviously isn't jumping out the plane for you.
Yeah. I think it comes back to trust and faith, right? and self-worth, right? There are protocols that you follow. Like all of these like adrenaline junkie athletes that you see, you know, maybe posting a 15-second clip on a social media page have spent their lives and potentially weeks, days, years, hours to perfect whatever it's you're seeing for a 15-second moment. And, you know, like Luke Aikens jumped from like the stratosphere without a parachute, landing in a net. Camila Jabbar, who was my freediving coach, along with Will Trubich, who runs this vertical blue competition in the Bahamas, where I was diving. Supreme athletes who, you know, Camila has swum to, she's the Mexican world record holder of like 80 plus meters now. That's a, you know, I think I got to 37 meters in about the 4 days, which was like 100. And I was really struggling because of my mask. I wish I'd not worn a mask. I wish I just like had goggles, like you have these little, I wish I'd thought that through but I had some issues with equalizing. But, you know, or Mo Beck, who's this adaptive climber who just, you know, was born with one hand and started climbing as a child and just, you know, is the woman in her field doing what she does. And is like a glass half, you know, it's this overflowing. These people are just overflowing. But what it is that they are experts and it is a life choice almost, right? So in a way, like people have said to me, oh, have you gone back to doing the wingsuiting and I'm like, I really can't wait to do that. But it's like, it's not something you just dip in and out of, you know, it's a real lifestyle choice and it's a commitment and it's something that gives you excellence. And I think so trusting in that moment that trusting myself, for me, it was about becoming capable, right? In a way, like learning to follow the protocols, learning to be present enough to take on board everything that's being told to me so that I can apply it to the moment that I'm in. So when I'm in the plane and about to jump and you know, I think to be fair, I think the climbing, I got such potty mouth on the climbing because I was so frustrated and terrified by the gear, by the knots, by like whether I tied it right or whether the rope was going to hold me or whether I was going to, and mostly because actually I had Mo's life in my hands, right? Like, so, but it was, I think, becoming capable and having that like education and then being accountable for myself. So in the moment where the fear is really kicking in, it's just trusting. Like kind of coming back to everything I've learned from my practice, just trusting your life, having faith in your life. I think faith is so important, and I think misguided faith is sometimes so challenging for us as a species because it's led to so much heartbreak and conflict. But actually, I really admire people of faith because most people of faith, if it's not misguided, are really doing everything they can. And because it's my Buddhist practice, we'll try to be respectful of all faith. You know, I kind of feel like I know my path is the right one. I'm like, I wish everyone would join me on this. But I totally respect that everybody has their path. And I think that's what it comes down, right? Respect. So it's like a bit of it. The whole show was a bit of a human experiment for me. And I think the experiment and the lessons that I continually learn was a bit of like self-respect, becoming capable, trusting my life, and trusting that this was part of an important and necessary part of my life. And after all, I'd chosen to do it, you know, and I could find myself at times in these like super challenging, physically challenging moments, mentally, physically, and emotionally. They were all totally different. So, you know, like wingsuiting just was, it's super unnatural to jump out of a plane. And then I think what Luke said to me was that I'm probably the first person to have jumped at 26 jumps. Wow. So 25 jumps, I got my A license for skydiving, and my 26th jump was in a wingsuit. But he had me on this trajectory, but he knew from what he was watching, and, you know, we were working every day for, you know, a few, not even that long, but he knew that I was capable to do. So the free diving, I just didn't know if I was going to come back up. I was like, wait, what? What if because I had, and I think I was emotionally really challenged by this idea, like respecting my life, you know, treasuring my life, because I think in some ways in my youth, treasuring my life, valuing my life, understanding the value of life and being grateful for it in a very profound way. Like I think I have, you know, a stadium of angels or Buddhas or whoever you want to call them. But, and with climbing, it was like, I'd find myself in these moments, as I said, I'd be like, I'm really having a hard time here. And I would you know, I had this, one of my assistants who became a producing partner who I was working with for so long, who knew me so well, but I would just be like freaking out. She could see I was freaking out, but I was freaking out about something like, why am I wearing this t-shirt? What does this t-shirt mean? You know what I mean? It was so interesting how the mind, right? It's like you become, you know what I mean? Instead of just getting in your, you know, I became very, I was like trying to control the environment, control the things because I felt so out of control. Like this t-shirt is not the right t-shirt or whatever it might be. You know, it was like, for me, it could have been anything, but it was like, because I needed to control whatever I had possible, you know, on me because I felt so kind of out of control in some ways. So as a human, I felt like it was a human experiment, honestly. Like, I was like, how much does it take for me to crack? You know, how much pressure before and what does that look like in some ways? So, but in a way, like, you know, that was you know, I kept coming back to Namyo Renge Kyo. You know, what is meant for you is not going to go away, right? It's not, and but it's also, it was my first time in an unscripted world, right? Yeah. You know, I think because of the nature of my upbringing, dyslexia and education that was such a challenge, although I got it all, did it all. This is trusting my heart, right? You're trusting your experience, right? I mean, that's what you've done so well. You're able to communicate from the heart, listen, be present, and you know what I mean? And come in with the points that like, are like, oh wow, you're actually absorbing and taking that on. And I think, and sharing and putting a message out. But it's sometimes hard for people, you know, especially I think, you know, when you're younger.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I'm listening to you right now.
These adaptogens are great. My mind is firing. I'm like, I'm going to take more of this.
Good. I'm glad. We'll get you another. Are you finished with that one? Do you want another one? When I'm listening to you right now, and I really appreciate you going there because, of course, the external is hard, but I love how you boiled it down to that idea of trying to control the little you think you can control in the midst of the fact that you can't control anything of this. Yeah. And it's interesting how that is such a great metaphor for life.
Somehow, yeah.
Because we're all trying to control everything we can control and what we can't control, not recognizing that so much is outside of our control. And that makes us in life feel helpless. And it can often make us retreat and hide and disappear. But when you're climbing a mountain, you can't disappear. Like you can't retreat from that. Yeah. Right? It's almost like you have to sit in that discomfort and you have to sit with that emotion, which is actually what real life is demanding of us. But we find a way to kind of hide it, push it away, deal with it. Yeah. And so it's the most physical, real way. I remember when, and this is what I think hopefully the show will, you know, encourage people to do. We all have something that's uncomfortable for us, whether it's internal or external. And I think everyone needs a friend who encourages them to do some extreme sports now and again. My wife needs less encouragement than I do. As life has gone on, I've become a bit more reserved. And I had a friend a couple of years ago who made me do skydiving, who made me do crazy things with him. And I was really grateful for that because it made me realize how many blocks I had up here that I was unaware of. I thought I'd conquered so many blocks, but there was still so much lack of trust and so much lack of that feeling of, oh, actually, I can sit in discomfort. I was almost trying to get away from discomfort because at one point in my life, I'd put myself through so much of it. Right. And now just wanted to be in a comfortable space, which is fair.
Fair.
But one thing you say in the docuseries, kind of in the beginning, was this idea of, you say, being on the edge makes me feel most alive. But then at the same time, I see you as someone who really values the little things day to day. And obviously with your Buddhist practice is mindful and present. How do you reconcile the two? Because, you know, if you're feeling all this adrenaline and this extreme sport, and that makes you feel alive, but then how do you also feel alive in the tiny moments of maybe being with your kids or you know, being with Blue, as your beautiful dog that we were just with now.
Thank you. Yeah. I think, you know, it's such good questions. I think to let, two things, and I want to come back to that question, but I think in a way, like, what are the parts of the show is like, what did it take for me to be remarkably present? Look, I'm one of the most privileged people, I consider myself. The experiences that I've had in the world, in life, I feel just so grateful all the time. I wake up feeling grateful, and, you know, I feel, you know, that partly that's my practice too, giving me the opportunity. But for some people, it's like, look, just getting up from the couch and going to the kitchen. What does it take for them to do that? I know through COVID, which was the idea, it's like, what does it take for that person just to go to the park, just step outside, take your shoes off, socks off, stand in the grass and look at the trees, and just, that may be all it takes, but it may be so challenging for one person, for that person. So like, yes, for me, you know, when I was kind of raw dogging it with all my kind of ADD and just things happening, I was just like in it. I say that because when I say raw dogging, I mean, I was just like, I've subsequently found like a really amazing like peptide, which is fantastic. That's helped me really kind of connect my thoughts at times, because sometimes it's really disjointed, but in a way I love that about my thinking, because it kind of is sporadic. But for some people, as I said, the hope for the show for me was like, it took me, okay, for me, who, you know, arguably throughout my life has really, you know, loved the thrill. Like if I'm going really fast, either on a motorcycle or in a car or whatever it may be, I feel like I'm more focused. Like I'm more likely to have an accident at 30 miles an hour than I am at 60 miles an hour, you know, because I'm just, I switch into some other mode. And it's kind of true for everything I've done in my life. Like if it's really up against me, then I'm going to step up in a whole other way. Like for example, Lord of the Rings, where I was like my first movie really. And I'm with Ian McKellen and Ian Holm and Christopher Lee and Viggo Mortensen and even Elijah, who I'd seen in movies, and, you know, like these amazing actors, all of whom had so much experience. And it was an amazing gift. But it was also like, okay, step up, you know, and the blessing of that. So I think you kind of take that high of these insane things that you're doing, but it's all really like relevant to like sometimes I can wake up in the morning and I just can't figure out even which way to go. You know, I'm like, I can feel like, I'm like, wait, what? I'm so grateful, but wait, what am I? My brain is like, it's like trying to bring it online, and it can be really overwhelming in terms of, you know. So it's like back to chance, back to breath, back to presence, back to stillness, back to gratitude, back to like, I had this. I think I had this kind of really remarkable plant journey, medicine journey. And, you know, I set an intention around the feminine, because we touched on my mother briefly, and I was like, you know, my mother gave me this, which is wonderful, and loved me wholeheartedly, and was in boarding school at the age of 4. So it was like, didn't really have a full, you know, sense of what nurture and things was, but she was is and remains so loving, and a great opportunity for me to continue to grow and evolve. But I set an intention before I was like, because I'd wanted to ask Katie to marry me, and I was like, I just need to kind of check in. And I'd never done, you know, this particular medicine, and I was like, I want to just, so I flew somewhere to meet this, and I'd set this intention around the feminine, right? And it was like, and basically the 3 points that came out, I was like, am I clean? Am I good here? Can I move forward with this? Because it's important to me to know that I'm clear, right? And And so it's with Aya, right? So you get this feeling of, and somebody had explained to me that you have this amazing feminine energy coming at you. And I think you're supposed to do 3 cups, and I took 5. Well, I wanted to have this, I was just waiting. I was there and I was just on a couch with this amazing room of musicians and this wonderful guide. And he just looked at me at 6 a.m. and he had been journeying with me and he was like, "You want more?" And I was like, "One more." And then I had this like sensation of lightness and this, I think basically it's like our minds, right? You're exploring aspects of your mind that the neural pathways that you just haven't like looked at, right? You understand that it's the map of your mind, right? That's kind of, and you've disconnected your ego enough to be humble enough to take on. And this message was, well, first of all, just be grateful. Look at your life, right? Second of all, you don't have an issue with women. Look at your life, wonderful women in your life. And even if there are aspects of women in your life that you have, it's all been part of your evolution. But maybe the feminine in you, it was like she was, it was like, so maybe you could nurture a bit more of the feminine in you.
Right.
And I was like, okay. But it was like nurture, I guess the creative artistic side, the just like pondering and poetical and things that I hadn't. And then, but the last one that I remember that was it was like, whenever you're with somebody, it may be the last time you see them again. You just don't know. So make it great. What have you got to lose? You may never see this person again. We don't know. Life is like, you don't know. So just make it great. Because at a young age, I'd had a real challenge. I'd had people come at me consistently, right? And I'd be like, and I'd be in whatever mental state or moment that I was in. And sometimes I'd be like, and all they want is this moment. And it's so easy for me to just go, hey, yeah, photo, sure, yeah, here, that, no problem. And then carry on. But sometimes it was just like, it felt like almost acid because I was just, what it represented at a different time in my life was a restriction, right? And I wanted to feel free. But I think that moment of that thing for me was like, you may never see this person again. You don't know. Life is not built like that. So just make it great. It's not hard, right? Or at least leave it with that, So I think that was did I answer the question?
Yeah. No, I mean, so much, you gave me so much more to unpack there. I love it. I mean, on that point, I do think if we lived in a world where you genuinely believed that any moment with anyone could be your last.
Yeah.
The way you'd speak to them, the way you'd look at them,
Respect.
the way you'd listen to them would just transform. And I'm sure you have friends. I have friends who've lost parents, partners, people, and they all regret their last conversation with them because it was conflict or it was an argument or it was a debate that they didn't need to have.
They've been in conflict, who knows,
Yeah, and they didn't know that was going to be the last time. And I've spoken to friends who've held that for so much longer because it becomes such a hard release to know that you could have, should have, would have said something differently.
Might have done it differently.
But going back to what was revealed to you and even that, I mean, I look at relationships as such a area where so many of our fears are brought to the surface. I found this with my own wife. Like, we've been together for 11 years and married for 8.
What's the secret?
And it's being comfortable with the idea that she is also the deepest mirror I'll ever have.
Right.
Because no one in the world sees all of my flaws, all of my mistakes, all the moments when I'm not perfect. I always joke about how like my wife knows whether I meditated this morning or not. Like no one else does, but my wife knows.
Yeah.
And my wife knows whether it was quality or whether it was distracted. My wife knows whether, my wife knows whether I left my socks on the floor, whatever, just whether it's silly or deep, she is in a position. And when your partner doesn't abuse that authority and doesn't use it as a form of control, but actually reflects back some care and compassion, it can be a really, it's almost like you can't grow without it. What scared you about relationships, and what, like you said, you had no problem with women, that wasn't a thing, but what was revealed to you in your relationship?
Yeah.
What's been revealed to you in your relationship is a better question.
I think I'm constantly learning to let go, because anything that I try to hold on to, whether it's good or bad, doesn't serve me. Not in the relationship, and it doesn't really serve either of us. And that's really hard to keep letting go, and to keep letting her go. You know, the idea of, because I think when you're in a deeply loving, committed relationship, you want to control or own or have, and, you know, even just letting go of ideas of how things should be, or the idea of what intimacy or intimate moments are to you versus them, or how, you know, whatever it may be, because you've chosen that person, you're on a journey with that person, you know, you're going to learn this lesson. And if you've chosen that person, then that's the person you're going to learn that lesson with. You know, I mean, that's the opportunity, right?
That's real. Yeah, that really resonates. I feel like that's why we'd rather let go of the person and have a new 6-month period with someone new, because you don't have to let go in that 6 months. Like that 6 months is almost full of holding on, and every idea and every hope and possibility remains intact. Like you don't have to dismantle it or question it or break it down. But you are so right that the amount of misconceptions I've had to let go of as we spend more time together.
And I think it's going to change every day, right?
Absolutely.
It's like every day I choose you.
Yeah.
You know, because also, you know, your wife is changing, right? 7 years from now, she's going to be a completely different human.
Yeah.
You have no idea, right? You know, you clearly have been around each other, and you do probably have a sense, but we don't know.
You don't know.
It's the same thing as, like, I may never see that person again.
Yeah.
Every day, you may never see that version of that person again, or, you know, whatever it may be. But, like, yeah, we're just, you know, I'm forced. I seize the opportunity every day to grow. And as you see from the show, I'll never choose the easy path, you know? Like, it's just not who I am.
Yeah.
And, you know, in some ways, my relationship is the greatest opportunity for my continual growth. And, you know, and I know we both see it that way. So that's how we grow, and we do. And she will not, you know, she'll hold me accountable, and I'll do the same. And sometimes, you know, you'll be confronted by your own self, you know? And I think, you know, trust, right? Trusting your path, your journey, your faith, that this is what's meant for you. And then, you know, the universe will take care of the rest, and making mistakes and going, okay, did that. Sorry. I sort of am like, there's no, I think I've, you know, seen how, learning more, like the mistake. I think very early on in life, actually, weirdly, I didn't enjoy making mistakes. Does anybody? I don't know. Maybe some people really do, but I didn't. Wasn't comfortable with messing up.
It'd be hard to find someone who enjoyed making mistakes. Yeah.
And yet, any sage or worthy will tell you it's only through mistakes that you grow, right? So it's like going, okay, you know, like that's where the rich stuff is. That's where you're gonna. So I just try to keep growing, and, you know, accepting, and, you know.
Yeah. How does it feel to introduce your Buddhist practices and teachings to the kids? Like, how does that work? I'm fascinated by.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I say Namyo Renge Kyo to Daisy, and sometimes on the other side of the world on a movie, she'll be like, I say Namyo Renge Kyo, and she'll go, Namyo Renge Kyo. I think, and Flynn chanted, you know, I did the same with him. And I don't so Flynn's mother has a beautiful faith in life, I think, and I really respect it. And I don't challenge any of the things, his views that he's obviously imbued through his mother. And, you know, we love to go on walks. I love to go on walks with my son, and we talk a lot. I try to, you know, and at different stages, look, he's 13 now. So it's almost like dad is getting pushed aside, and I kind of know what that feels like. I was the same, you know, so I try not to take it personally.
Yeah.
And I miss him, and I'm like, I just text him, I love him and I miss him. But we have these wonderful walks and talks, and I kind of just throughout whatever we're saying, I try to keep reinforcing just the undercurrent philosophy and thinking of my practice, and which is just, you know, are you respecting? Are you, you know, if there is that kid in class who's not, you know, are you supporting that kid that's not getting the support? Because that's where you'll find the richness, right? Because I kind of like, I know that's in his heart as well. I see it. And funny, he said to me, Dad, you know, I'm really good at just bluffing. And I think but this is him at 13, you know, flexing a bit in this way of trying to kick. And he's like, yeah, but Dad, I just knew that would be the thing that people would appreciate. I'm like, good, well, just keep working that then.
Yeah.
Because even if your thinking will try and make you say you're going to do, just keep working that. Even if you think it's like you're putting on a show, fake it till you make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just keep trying to do the right thing. And eventually you'll start to realize what the right thing is, right? But I love to walk and talk with him, and I just don't overwhelm him with it, because in my faith, I believe by saying Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Say it to me, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So by saying this once, you never have to say it again. You protected 7 generations in your past and 7 generations in your future.
Oh, thank you for that gift. That's beautiful.
So I believe that. Deeply
beautiful.
Believe that.
And I believe
so sometimes I will just walk up to somebody and say, just say Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, just once.
Yeah.
And I'll tell them that, and then I'll walk away, whatever. And it'd be like, I believe that. It's like finding a needle in the eye of a haystack. And so you never have to do it again. You've done it. 7 generations past.
I'll see it every time I see you now.
And if you ever, good.
Yeah.
And if it was something that resonated with you at the time or at the moment, then great. I encourage people to do that. It's not, you know, I'm like, well, this is how you do it. It's not a meditational process, right? Yeah. Like a meditation I do as well. I have a meditation, TM practice. But for me, it's like yoga for the mind. You know, it's like when I'm really stressed out or feel like, you know, that too much coffee.
Do you ever get really stressed out? You seem so
chill.
Yeah.
No. I'm sitting here opposite Jay Shetty. Do you want me to show you the other side of me? No, bro. I mean, like, you can see, you'll see the climbing episode. You'll see the potty.
Yeah, I haven't got there.
You see the potty mouth and I'm like, I redline, bro. I'm like, I really, like, mostly I'm like, I can really, I can be in the red. Like, and that's something that I just try to navigate. But I like that. I embrace it. I accept it.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? It's like I can be on in that space. It's like the difference between driving at 30 or 60. It's like, obviously I would, you know, God forbid, you want to observe the speed limit because there are children and things, but like, I know what, you know, so sometimes I can be really intense.
How have you
emotionally?
Have you accepted the parts of yourself that most of us judge, criticize, or feel uncomfortable? Granted that they're not affecting other people.
Aside from chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo?
Yeah.
I think because of that practice, I'm constantly looking at that. But I think it's time, honestly. Mm-hmm. And I think it's experience, because the experiences have taught me like that, you know, shame is not my friend. Guilt, shame. If you spend too much time in that negative thought pattern, you know, we're light energy. We're like little planets, right? Mm-hmm. But if you broke our bodies down, I was having this conversation with somebody who was giving me a massage the other night. She's this amazing woman. And she was like, but we're like little galaxies. If you actually dissolved us, the trillions and billions of, cells and everything, it's like a little galaxy. So we're all little galaxies going around the planet, right? In a way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So all of that energy, which, as you know and talked about many times, but it's like it's whatever you're saying, you become, right? As we all know, all these old adages are so true. So it's not like, but so yeah, I think for me, it's like the shame game doesn't work. I don't want to receive it from anyone. I mean, I had this amazing experience, and I went 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago now, 7 years ago, more than 7 years ago, nearly 8 years ago, I went to the Hoffman Institute, which is this wonderful,
yes, yeah.
And it was, I'd been seeing Katie for a year and I'd broken up, and then we hadn't actually. We'd broken up, yeah. I'd been seeing her for a little while, and then we had broken up, and we got back together. You know, the young love weirdness of trying to find things, but I'd been triggered into this really unique pattern of behavior that I felt I'd inherited from my mom. Right, this thing of like, see me, I'm here. You know, with my mom, I'm over here. You know, I think you know what I mean, and trying to get the attention, right? And I was like, oh, one of the worst years internally I can ever remember, because I felt like I was playing a part instead of being a part. And I was just, because I had so many feelings, and I was in water that was just uncharted. So a dear friend of mine, Buddhist, had an actor friend from New York had suggested that I do this 2 years ago, and I hadn't picked up on it. James Lestine, this amazing actor, human, just wonderful person. And I was like, sort of remembered when we'd had this breakup, and I'd remembered I'd taken my passport, left everything else, and walked into New York because we'd been in New York. And then I was like, got on a plane home. But before I got on a plane home, I went to his house because it was like 5 a.m. when we'd had this rip-roaring argument. And I was like, took my passport and walked out the door. And I was like, and he'd talked about it. And so I did this course. And I left with these three thinking. And it was a wonderful week where you don't have your phone, you don't have the email. So you have no connection to the outside world, really. And and people, you know, obviously I was me, but I had this, nobody's there for that. So yes. It's really, people are on their own. They're all in their own form of need. So I was wearing like a name tag that was my childhood name or whatever. And then I did 7 days of like, I guess kind of like a group therapy. And it felt like 3 years of therapy in 7 days in a way. And they take you on this beautiful journey through these 7 days where you have like a Thanksgiving dinner, a Christmas dinner, a birthday, and a whole thing it's beautiful the way it's constructed. And I came out with this thinking, and I talked to James at that time about this as well, of feeling safe, seen, and celebrated. I want to feel safe. So in terms of my relationship, so with self first, right? So if I look in the mirror, I feel safe. Do I feel safe with you today? Do I feel seen by you? Am I kind of observing myself? And do I feel celebrated, right? But really it's for the people in my life. Like, do I feel safe with this person? Do I feel seen by this person? And am I feeling celebrated? And can I do that for them? Obviously, right? It's a mirror. So if I'm feeling that way, then you're good. It's a green light. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not, then I'm going to just step back, take pause until I can feel that way. And if I can't feel that way, then maybe life and the universe will take us on different trajectories. But whilst I feel that way, so safe, seen, and celebrated was something that really made me kind of go, I came back into my life and into my relationship after this. And then I said, we separated. It was interesting. And I was like, I looked up, I was like, okay, this is what's meant. You know, this is some years ago now.
Yeah.
But this stickiness that we had, this connection, and she was never really not a part of my thoughts. And she would reach out in weird ways like Instagram or whatever. And I'd be like, processing, and I was like, so and then I made a sort of decision, because I had this safe, seen, celebrated thing, not to see her unless she would. And then she actually did this Hoffman as well. Wow. And had an amazing experience herself. Wow. And so we just kind of, I think it was like it created a foundation. So we're constantly sort of bouncing off this thing. And sometimes the foundation's really rocky. Of course. And sometimes I don't know. You know, sometimes like, is the universe, are we still going? I gave her this picture of a tree, you know, and I was like, And it was this beautiful, I bought it in India, I think, but it was these two trees growing as one. I was like, this is what it should be, right? Yeah. So long as we can, the branches can go all over the place, but the roots and the base of the tree the trunk is growing together. You know, it's the pillars of the temple, right?
Yes.
You need them to stand strong together so that you can hold hold that. Yeah, but it's been
That's great criteria though. I like that. Safe, seen, and celebrated.
Yeah.
It's like a beautiful way of checking and connecting wavelength.
Yes.
The visual you just painted right now of the two trees feels perfect. Like that visual just resonated so strongly.
Sometimes people are not up for that as well, though.
No.
You know? Sometimes they're not ready for that. It can be really overwhelming. It can be really overwhelming. All of your good intention, right? All of your desire for the greatest outcome can be super intimidating and overwhelming, depending on whether your wife is ready in that day, in that moment. And as we know from, the remarkable, I had this, I thought I was like, when I had Daisy, my daughter, I was like, I feel like every man should have a daughter before they get married in a way, because it's like you see every emotion under the sun in the split second. And it's like, and you have nothing but love because you're there. Yeah. There's no judgment. There's just like, I'm just like marveling at her explosion of emotion.
Yeah.
And she'll be like, no, daddy, no, dad, mommy, I want that. And I'll be like, if I'd been in, a partner, a reflection of a partner doing that could have really messed me up at different times in my life. Wait, what? Yeah. See me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm over here, mommy, I'm over here. Whatever it may be. Our patterns from childhood, whatever that may be. And I'm like, oh. And it's in a way, it's like, so I can have those, with a powerful human, that I've chosen in some ways every day. Yeah. It's like, got to keep leveling up and trying and making mistakes and going, okay, no, that didn't work. Or I'm going to do this and that's, no, don't do that. You might, but sometimes it's very interesting, isn't it? I think the masculine in relation to the feminine, like my mind map again, like I'd set an intention around and it was like, oh no, it's not women. It's like the feminine within you. It's like, but in this world that we live in, it's like trying to find the right level, because it's not like obvious, it's not, there's no, it's, I think people are always, how do you have the right balance? It's like, it's like,
you can't.
It's like sometimes you're just really, overly, edgy. And sometimes you just like, you can be that, you can hold that big space because in your mind you're capable. But, I think it's just choosing, right? You just keep choosing, you choose life and you choose to go on a journey and you choose to keep it real and you choose to, for me at least.
Yeah, I feel what you said about, like for me, my sister's like 4.5 years younger than me or something. And I feel like I remember holding her when she was born. Last year I got to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Oh. And it was, my nickname for my sister is Kid because I've treated her like my daughter since she was born. And she's always felt that way to me. And you're so right. Like my wife will always say to me, gosh, when you're around your sister, you're just, completely different in this. And it's that fatherly, brotherly.
Does she like that version?
My sister?
No, your wife. Does she?
She finds it adorable.
Oh,
she finds it adorable.
She's like, lean into that more. No. Is that not really, not so much? It's just like, no. It's just like,
no. She finds that adorable, but she sees what capacity I have for tolerance and for what you're saying, that being that bigger holding space.
When you have your own daughter.
When you have it for that love, and you're so right that when you've been able to experience that, it's so much easier to understand. I always feel like I was raised by my mom and tried to raise my sister the best as I could. And it was almost like that's made me a better husband than I would have been.
Right.
Because I had a different experience with women that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have a younger sister and I had a younger brother or whatever it may have been.
Right.
And so that resonates very strongly. But also this idea of, I've seen myself act with my wife, with the people I love, in a way that I don't like at all. And I've seen myself act in the best way possible. And I'll oscillate between the two depending on where I'm at on any given day. And it's what you said earlier, that it takes two people to be able to let go. It takes two people to be able to forgive. It takes two people to be able to not over amplify or underreact or overreact. And you're constantly playing in that space if you want a loyal, committed, long-term relationship, which has very different positives than a short, easy, quick moment. And
quick fix,
yeah. And it's almost like, it's what you said, it's choosing what you want.
Once you decide we have that idea in my practice. Once it's like, and Sensei discusses, once you decide, your whole world will move in that direction.
Yes.
Once you decide, you know what I mean? Everything is set up for the universe to support that decision, but you must decide, whatever it may be. And then if the wheels fall off along the way, you realize that you've decided and there are mistakes, but then you set about fixing. And I wrote this like a mission statement when I first met her, because I wanted to try to articulate all these crazy feelings that I was having at the time, which was like a reveal that I hadn't had in a long time in somehow. And one of the things that I said in this like this letter I wrote her was, we're going to bring our little kids out, our inner child, we're going to bring out, and I'll duke it out with you as much as you like, so long as you just promise to keep getting up, because it's like, if we don't get up, I need to know that like, you'll duke it out, I'll duke it out, but that we'll get up, and keep, because it doesn't matter about, you're going to go down. People are going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. Life is set for that. It's not meant to be. The opportunities, as we said at the beginning, for growth don't come through an easy path. They're not when everything's going great. It's when the shit's hit the fan, right? And that's when, so I kind of feel like I'm constantly like, when's the next one? Next lesson. When's the next one coming? But how much humility do I need to learn today? Or what do I need to do? And what choices have I made that have led to this? And how am I going to own that?
What's the difference between that? Because I resonate with that. I always say to people that when things are going bad, work hard. And when things are going good, work harder. Right? You're always pushing yourself to learn, grow, evolve more when actually things are good. Because a lot of us, we do the opposite. When things are good, we get complacent, we get lost. What is the difference for you between that mindset getting exhausting versus energizing? Because I think a lot of people would say, gosh, if I'm always having to figure out what to learn and what message and from the universe and my partner, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
But it seems like you're energized by that, which is what you see in the show. Like you're energized by the idea that there's more to learn. What's the difference? What have you found? How are you able to sustain that level of wanting to evolve and grow?
I think that I just came in that way, bro.
That's just how you're built.
I think I came in that way. I think we all come in different, right? When I reflect on all of the opportunities for growth in my life, they all reinforce this idea that this is what I need to learn at this time, right? In retrospect, when you're younger and in that moment of crisis, whatever that may be. And listen, I didn't have a mobile phone till I was 20, right? But there is a window of time in my life which is almost like a void because of the immense pressure and experience that life was throwing at me at such a rapid pace that I literally can, like, there are almost feel like blank spots, right? Like I can't even, like my best friends would go, well, remember when we went to Japan on that press? And I was like, we went to Japan together? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So, but yeah, I think that's it. I think that
makes sense.
I think starting at a young age with a practice like mine helped me as well to recognize, because we're constantly reinforcing this idea of opportunities through obstacles or opportunities. And even when you're in it, it's nightmares, these exams, this thing, this, this boyfriend or this girlfriend or this situation, this, like, I think it's always simplify as well, right? Steady.
Yeah.
Like life, is you know, at least my experience is like, I love the high octane, right? Mm-hmm. And I've been at that depths. I love the depth as well. But when I'm steady, when I just like come back to the simple, right? Simplify. Because sometimes you just need a walk, you know what I mean? You just need to go outdoors. Sometimes you just need to look at the sky, take a deep breath. Sometimes it's just, and it's a few little touchstones that you can create for yourself, you know, so that you have tools, right? Yeah. Create your own toolbox. And I think that's what I got from just so many different things, whether it's Hoffman or a plant journey,
so many,
or an encounter with somebody important, or my relationship to Daisaku Ikeda, my mentor, and I think it's also we're all wired differently. So like, you know, if you keep leaning into that area of and not being afraid to lean into the discomfort of life, then that's what the show is giving you. You know, you're leaning into the discomfort, you get the benefit, right? Yeah. And you know, again, that might just be getting up from your couch, turning off the TV, or not scrolling on your phone, or putting, you know, just deleting that app for like 24 hours so that you're just not being ruled by something outside of yourself. I think in this new age, right, we've been in the age of the internet. I think in this new age of AI, which there's so much anxiety and sort of, you know, nervousness around. And I saw, you know, Sam Altman speak about some of this stuff. And I thought it was so interesting. But I think my takeaway from what he had said and what I think is true for my life and what I can sense is discipline, self-discipline, because it's a choice to pick up your phone. It's a choice to get lost in your phone. It's a choice to keep scrolling, or you could choose to put it down and step outside and simplify, do that meditation, do that yoga class. It's all choices, right? But I think the people that, I think that if, as and when, you know, we see this new chapter of life, it's going to be totally different. My son, your children, when you come into the world, they're not going to know a world without super intelligence. They're just not going to know that. Like my son doesn't know a world without the internet. How's that impacted his life? I do.
Yeah. So do I, yeah.
But they're not going to know a world without super intelligence. And it's going to bring remarkable benefit to our lives. No doubt, I'm sure. Health, healing, you know, access, life. But it's like those old adages, like devil's hands, you know, idle hands are the devil's playground. So I keep thinking like, what's the discipline I'm going to create, the routines and disciplines to create and keep working at, so that I don't slip off into that, because I do it. I can find myself just going, and I kind of love my algorithm, by the way. like it'll send me all of your things and other people's, you know, and like messaging around, it's definitely listening to me, messaging around, oh, this relationship person is talking about fantastic things, you know? And I'm like, oh, that would be great for the world to see, or whatever, you know, or whatever it may be. So like, it's not all bad, but it is, I think the discipline, the self-mastery of discipline, right? Self-discipline and self-mastery to know.
One skill needed.
The one that will protect. Because if you're like, what do they call them in games where it's like non-player NPC, is it?
NPC,
right?
Yeah.
We can all become those. We can all just switch off and turn on our autopilot and just be like, because you don't want to, because it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. You're overwhelmed by the consistent. I mean, you know, if you keep looking at the news, you're just going to be overwhelmed. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
You know, I have so many friends who are like on both sides of, you know, conflicts, you know, whether, you know, and just, it's just, you just go, you can just be overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
You can just,
and that is where we're at, I think.
I think so, yeah.
We're overwhelmed, we're over-consuming, we're
overexposed. Honestly. We see and hear and understand. We get
and there's no
access
discipline.
to so much more information than we need. And then we continue to get more. And then what's true, what's not true.
Yeah. It's a lot. And that's why it's a lot. And that's why if anyone's not feeling disciplined or is struggling, there's a lot of compassion and empathy there, because
so much.
It's so hard.
You show me a human, I'll show you anyone, right? You know, and that's true of relationships, right? I think one of the things, like Laird and Gabby Hamilton were a big part of my life at a period in my life a few years ago where I was separated from my partner, Flynn's mum, and I was living kind of on my own in Malibu, and they were such a really beautiful couple. The way I learned so much from seeing how they interacted. And I always appreciate that. I took that away with me, but I think it's like, I kind of respect couples more than anything else almost now today, somehow as well, when we talk about relationship, because it's the people that have kind of gone, they're continuing to choose and not to upgrade or think they're upgrading or that the grass is greener, you know, because we can all do that.
Of course.
And maybe we will. And there's no judgment there either too. By the way, no judgment on any of it. But personally, I kind of go, oh, wow. Well, you know, I admire that because it's not easy, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because as we age and change, and it's like, and we're all being told that, like, you can get this new handbag that will go with this new car, or you can get this new watch and this new thing, and you're just going to keep. And I love a shiny object.
So do I. Yeah.
I love a shiny object. You know,
how have you managed to maintain your Buddhist practice and philosophy in Hollywood? Because I imagine that,
dude, that Buddhist philosophy and products has been my anchor. Yeah. It's not. I haven't maintained it. It's been my. It's maintained me. It's held me. I really feel like it's my super cape.
You can tell
it's my cape.
It's obvious. Yeah.
It's my superpower, you know, and it's available to anyone, but I got it at a young age, and I'm like, it's my wings. It's my shield. It's my wisdom. It's my courage. It's my compassion. If I just use it, and sometimes I won't. There are days I won't chant, and I'm like, I mean, look, I'm years and years into this, so it's just I feel that it's never gone far from me, but I know when I'm not. I'm like, wait, what's going on? Often it's been when I've been in a relationship, by the way.
Wow.
Often I've been in a relationship and I don't. And I was like, wait, what? Why? Why is that? Why am I not when I'm, because what's being so, yeah, but it was literally my.
I can feel it. It's very obvious. It's very evident from the show and today. It's very real in your veins. What's something you feel you're being called right now? What's the fear you're being called to overcome right now, or the lesson that you're being questioned? I sat with this question last year, and it was really, really interesting for me in my own meditation. It was revealed to me that if I really want to serve and have the impact that I want to have, that I'll have to be okay with dealing with more stress, pain, external kind of
energy coming at you to overcome, so that you can you can paint a bigger canvas. Correct. And have
but
a bigger.
It will require that. That's and that was a very interesting, almost request or question that I was hearing from the universe or from God or from my own spiritual practice of, this is what's required of you. Are you ready for you? Are you okay? What have you heard that or felt that you are being? What fear are you being asked to overcome, or what lesson are you being asked to learn right now? Anything comes to, because you've conquered so many fears in the show and gone to the edge. What's an edge that is being requested of you?
I think that our deepest fears often lie in areas unknown to us, subconscious, even in our subconscious. Some of the deepest fears I have are like related to a historical pattern of behavior or thinking, which I don't know that I was even conscious of. You know, like I've inherited, and possibly from, in my mind, because of my practice and faith, generationally, lifetimes, previous lifetimes of thinking. Because that's how I kind of live my life, like for the next life. That's how I'm looking at it now. I'm like, I'm living for the next one. You know, it's like the Egyptians with the temples. It's like they were doing that because it was like, and I kind of like, if I can live like that. But I think that when I allow myself, it feels connected to, I think, self-worth, which I think is something that like we all kind of like, you know, like, is Jay ready for that bigger canvas? Is he ready to put that message out into the world?
Mm-hmm.
Does he deserve that? Has he done enough for that?
Mm-hmm.
Am I worthy of that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Have I done the work? Am I in the flow enough? And also like, because it's cyclical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're just not in the flow.
Mm-hmm.
I had 7 years of just being what felt like some of that, like swimming up river. Because I was just, I'm going to swim up this river now for some reason. You know, and that was partly that time when I was separated and living in Melbourne and like training with lead and stuff. And I really kind of put my body and my mind through a lot of different, before I did the show, even before I did To the Edge. So I think it really, for me, it's like that we're enough, right? I think somebody said it on your wall there, that you're enough. But it's like, I think we all struggle sometimes to really deeply believe that we are enough, that we're valued, that we're valuable. You know, we're imprinted by our parents from the age of 0 to 7, right? But that's not even taking into account the time that, you know, you're in your mother's. So there's a whole heap of information that is just like, is it yours or is it somebody else's? I'm constantly trying to go like, how do I detach from from this idea of is that my is that my baggage? It doesn't look like my baggage. I mean, I know. Okay, that's mine. All right, I'll take that. Let's unpack that. Yeah. But all that other stuff, you know, and I think Hoffman taught me a lot in that space, but I think interestingly, like, it's a fear of like being alone. Are you good to be alone? I think that was the biggest for me in a long time. Am I good to just be on my own? And I'm constantly working on that.
Yeah.
Am I good enough on my own? Because am I good in my own company? Do I feel good with me? Just to be with just me today? Or for this next hour? Because I spent a lot of time in my youth with people who I, you know, really love and admire and adore and continue to, but in a way, it wasn't serving me. I was like, it was, you know, we talk about energy and drains and things. You know, there were relationships in my life that I didn't even really realize that the impact that they were having. And then when I did, I was like, oh, wait a second, this needs reframing. And until I'm ready to reframe, I'm going to just take pause to feel safe, seen, and celebrated. But so in amongst all of that, I think it was probably being alone and being good with being alone and recognizing, because we're going to be born and we're going to die alone, right? So it's like, how good are you with being alone, right?
That's beautiful, man.
I think. And that you're enough, right? You don't need all the other things. Because I love a shiny object. You know, whatever. Like, although this isn't shiny, but it's the one from New Zealand.
I don't, yeah.
But, you know, I do. I've got a fast car, couple. Do I need them? I like the way it feels. Yeah. But, you know, do we need to keep consuming all this stuff when the planet is got a ticking clock? It's interesting. It's really interesting.
I find that we're all paradoxes and we're almost giving ourselves permission to be a paradox until all of it's purified. And it's almost the permission is what allows you the ability to purify. Whereas if you're living in the conflict of I'm only one thing, you don't get the opportunity to dissolve the part that you may not be comfortable with because you haven't accepted it.
Yeah.
But no, that answer was beautiful. Being alone and being comfortable in your own skin and being enough. And that is the lifelong journey. I feel like that's, you know, that is it. And Orlando, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. And we have. And I hope we do.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we should.
I want to end with what we end every episode on, which is called the final 5 of On Purpose. These are pretty much the same 5 questions that everyone gets answered. And every question has to be answered in 1 word to 1 sentence maximum.
Okay.
So,
gosh, I hate that kind of pressure.
These are your final 5. And you can take your time. They're thoughtful questions. Orlando, these are your final 5. The first question is, what is the best advice you've ever heard or received?
My mother used to say, have respect from the doorman to the director. And I think respect all life, anyone you meet, because we're all on that journey. And the person that's opening the door for you could be running the country. You just don't know.
Great answer. Question number 2, what's the worst advice you've ever heard or received?
The worst. The worst advice. That's a really tricky one.
You can skip it if your mind's blocked it out. That's pretty cool.
It's hard for me to.
Yeah, that's good.
Hard for me to. The worst advice. Yeah. Sorry, dude.
No, that's good. Don't be sorry. That's totally great. I mean, if you blocked it all out, that's awesome. Because I like to make a log of bad advice everyone's received, because I feel like there's so much bad advice that goes around.
I mean, I'm not.
No, you blocked it out. That's cool.
Yeah. I'm like, if it's not a for me, I'm like.
Yeah, leave it. That's what I'm saying. I don't mind. I'll skip the question.
Yeah.
Don't need to apologize. Question number 3, what's the first thought you have in the morning and the last one you have at night?
So we wake up in a family bed, and Katie usually says, thank you, God, for today. I'm grateful in every way, especially for, and Daisy will go, and we'll all go, Daddy, Mummy, Flinny, we'll all do that.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And I'll then say, Nam Yoningikya. Yeah, I think gratitude.
Yeah.
And at night, it's the same.
Beautiful.
It's the same, because it's like we woke up, and I think,
Question number 4, what's something that you used to value that you don't value anymore?
Dude, that's so annoying. Other people's opinions of me.
Great answer. 5th and final question. We ask this to every guest who's ever been on the show. If you could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
I think it comes back to my first answer that my mother kind of instilled in me, which is just respect.
Yeah.
A law of respecting life, all life. Daisaku Ikeda wrote this amazing letter. He came to the UK, I think it was in the 80s, to visit the youth members. And he was there, but he chose not to stand before them to have a communication. I think because he could feel like the anticipation and the complete. So he wrote this letter, or he may have been busy, but he was there, but he didn't, but it was a choice, is from my understanding. And within it, he said, there's a piece about, I'm going to not maybe land this, but you'll get my point. This lifetime is about, from the material, from the external to the internal, and making all mothers happy. Because I'd love to actually find the quote to read it.
Do it. Yeah, do it. Go for it.
Okay, so here we go.
I'm a member of a Buddhist organization since I'm 16, and my mentor is a Japanese man in Japan, a man named Daisaku Ikeda. And in 1994, he wrote a message of encouragement to the youth of the UK. He wouldn't see them, but he sent this message. This is an excerpt from the message that he sent to these children for them to listen to. He reserved himself from being there. But I wanted to read it because I feel it's so important, and I had it written for you as well to read along. But it says, the times are changing from an age where power is justice, to an age in which justice is power. In this new age, the supreme guiding principle will be the benefit of all humanity rather than the interests of one particular nation or ethnic group. We will see the transformation of history from the revolution of the external environment to that of the inner self, the inner human revolution. It will be an age in which the actions of leaders will naturally be based on the guidelines of making all mothers happy.
The actions of leaders will be naturally based on the guidelines of making all mothers happy. Respect, right? Because we can't, us mortal men, really fathom, the power of what it means to be a mother in the world. But like, if we can have a little bit of, because, so interesting, isn't it? So interesting to see the times. Changing, and how this masculine that's been living in with us and we've been living with and under and around and for and is sort of transformed, and how we're learning, particularly as men, to respect and understand the power of the mother. Mother Earth, mother, the mothers. And it's like, and he goes on to say about respecting your father and mother, and I really think he means all fathers, all mothers, I was talking about this with David, who introduced me to my practice just earlier. And he was saying, I've really come to understand that it's all mothers. Respect all mothers, respect all fathers, particularly because they hopefully have some sense, of the value of life. And there are some people that don't. Of course there are some people that's not. But yeah, so I think that was
beautiful idea. I've never heard it been put that way.
It's a wonderful, and that idea as well, which actually, interestingly, I wrote a note of what Sam said about Altman, and he was like, the journey is now, because I think it's way more, it's not the external, it's the internal. If we are those little galaxies, right? If we really start to understand each of us and have respect and take responsibility, right? Imagine if, I think what I kind of understood about my practice was, if I'm good enough and capable enough to just take care of my side of the street, right? Then if I get so good at it, I can start to take care of other people's side of the street. Because there are some people that just don't have the skill set. They may not have had the education, they may not have had the upbringing, whatever it may be, the circumstances. They were born into a life that just didn't provide anything like the tools necessary to be able to cope with what life is. Like those obstacles I was talking about, that for some people, it's just there the whole time, right? It's like, if we're all becoming capable humans and able of taking care, then we can start taking care of your neighbor, right? You know what I mean? Start taking care of the person next to you, because they can't, right? Because that's what it's going to take, right? In my mind, for this next chapter where, jobs are not what they used to be, and people need, that boundary, right? They need that, that frame of reference. They need that kind of the security through boundaries, right? So yeah, the discipline, but the respect and the all mothers happy. Let's make all mothers happy, right? It's funny.
Orlando Bloom, Orlando.
Sometimes I don't do that, though, by the way. I try. We try.
You've said it here now. Everyone who's been listening and watching, thank you so much. Orlando, thank you for being
mate.
what I was saying to you a second ago. Thank you for being so vulnerable. Thanks for being so open. Thanks for being in a space of discovery to, you know, this conversation was us discovering what was in your heart, what was in your mind. It was us kind of unraveling and opening. And those to me are my favorite conversations when you don't know where you're going, but you know you're going there together. And I think that's so true for so much of what we discussed. And everyone who's been listening and watching back at home or at work or wherever you are in the world, make sure you tune in to The Edge, which is premiering on April 18th, if you haven't already. And also, please let me and Orlando know on Instagram, TikTok, you guys cut up the best clips and everything. Let me know what resonated, what connected. Tag us both so we can see what you're practicing, what you're staying with you, and what you're putting in and implementing and applying in your life. But a big thank you to Orlando for showing up.
Thanks, mate.
So
Thank you for
deeply and
having me.
wonderfully.
Love
And
it.
I'm excited for more of these conversations
Me
with
too,
you for
bro.
sure.
Me too. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Love it. Thanks so much for having me.
If this is the year that you're trying to get creative, you're trying to build more, I need you to listen to this episode with Rick Rubin on how to break into your most creative self, how to use unconventional methods that lead to success, and the secret to genuinely loving what you do. If you're trying to find your passion and your lane, Rick Rubin's episode is the one for you.
Just because I like it, that doesn't give it any value. Like, as an artist, if you like it, that's all of the value. That's the success comes when you say, I like this enough for other people to see it.